The hazard lights are probably the ones we use the most without a valid reason. They're supposed to be used mostly for emergencies, but people use them all the time for all sorts of other stuff. You turn on the hazards by pressing this button with the two nested red triangles. Here, this driver is waiting to park, so they're indicating that to the people behind with their hazards. Now, should we do that? Some people recommend putting the hazards to park, but you shouldn't. You use the turn signal for that. On most vehicles, the turn signals are shared with the hazards, as you can see here. So if you turn the hazards on when parking, people might not understand that that's what you want to do. For example, here I see this driver flashing to the right, and I see this available parking spot here, so I understand that what they want to do is to park there. So I leave enough room for them to make the maneuver. However, if the driver had put their hazards instead, I might think that they just want to stop for whatever reason, and I might get too close to them, and then they won't be able to park. Here, same thing. I might think that the driver wants to stop too, so I go around them, but then they start to reverse to park, the front of their vehicle points to the left, and there's a collision. If they put the turn signal instead, I understand that they want to park because they're next to an available parking spot, so I wait for them to park. Hazards are mostly for emergencies, that's why they're called hazard lights. Parking is not a hazard, use your turn signals when parking. Now you had a mechanical breakdown and have no other choice than to stop by the side of the road? Sure. You had a flat tire? Of course. And by the way, it's always a good idea to keep an emergency kit in your vehicle that includes props to make you more visible in case you need to stop in an emergency like this. Reflective road triangles, cones, flares, or something like that. A reflective vest is also a good idea. In some places, some of these things are mandatory and you need them in the vehicle at all times. But just keep in mind that because we do have hazard lights on our vehicles, it doesn't mean that we can just turn them on and stop anywhere. You double park because you're going somewhere for only a few minutes? No. You want to pick up a snack at the restaurant, so you stop in that bus stop zone and you put your hazards? No. You don't want to put money in the parking meter because you'll be parked there for just a few minutes? You can't do that. This will probably vary depending on where you drive, but usually it's tolerated mostly for delivery or service vehicles because a lot of times they have no choice but to park in places where you're not supposed to. But for private vehicles, it's not tolerated as much. As for the headlights, the way we use them the most to communicate with others is by flashing them a couple of times. And on most vehicles, you do that by pulling on the lever to the left of the steering wheel. Sometimes people use them in friendly ways, like if you want to change lanes, for example, they might flash to tell you that they're letting you do it. Sometimes to tell you that they're giving you priority. Like let's say I want to turn left here, and the vehicle in front has priority, but they let me go first. Sometimes they use them when people in front are distracted, which happens a lot nowadays with smartphones. And sometimes it's to warn you of something ahead, usually a speeding operation or a car crash. But be careful with this one, it's not allowed everywhere, and it's not allowed in some circumstances. And people use them sometimes in a not so friendly way to tell you that they feel you're going too slow and they want you to get out of the way. Then there are the brake lights, which turn on automatically when you press the brake pedal. Basically, try not to brake too late so that drivers behind you have enough time to react. And finally, the reverse lights, which turn on automatically when you put in reverse. Now let's say you're in a situation like this where you want to park here and you need to reverse but can't do it right away. What you should do right away though is to put in reverse to indicate to the people behind that what you want to do is park here and not turn right. That way, maybe they'll understand that you want to park and leave you enough room to do so. This is just an example. That's something you can do in any situation where you want to reverse but need to wait a bit before doing so. If you're driving a manual transmission vehicle and you want to park reversing on a downhill, you could put in neutral and reverse while controlling your speed only with the brake pedal. And it's actually easier to park that way because you don't need to worry about controlling the clutch. But it's better to put in reverse anyway so that the reverse light turns on and people behind know that you want to reverse to park. Keep in mind that if you want to use your own vehicle for your driving exam, all these lights need to be in good working order. If they're not, they'll most probably refuse the vehicle. so make sure to check if they're working properly. Usually that'll require the help of somebody to check that, but you can do it by yourself. Just stop in front of a reflective surface, brake, and put in reverse. In the next video, the horn. So stay tuned and see you soon.